today. I want to say Happy New Year. Happy New Year, folks. We have a year ahead of us that is literally, in my opinion, going to change the way that things have been handled. We have some wonderful, wonderful professionals who have really taken notice of a lot that's going on, a lot of systemic failures. They truly care about children. They want to see change. You know, so many professionals that got involved in the work, their respective field, whatever it is, whether it's social work or law enforcement or, political work, those that truly care about children and have heard enough stories now to take notice, they are just as concerned to all my parents as we are. And it's important that we not stereotype, and I say this each and every show, not all social workers are bad, not all police officers are bad, not all judges are bad. There are some that are bad and some that are good, just like some bad parents and some good. So we need to have an open mind. We need to be willing to work with good people. We need to have open arms and acceptance to take the help when it's offered. And it's really important because if you close those doors, you hurt yourself. So I don't want to talk anymore because we have a fabulous guest, and I'd like to introduce him right now. This is retired detective of many decades. I'm not going to say how many unless he wants to. He can tell you himself. Mr. Dan Scott. Dan, please introduce yourself and tell the audience a bit about your background, and let's dive in.
Sure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. We're honored.
I retired from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department after 33 years, July of 2013.
Excellent.
And during my career, I spent 26 years working for the Special Victims Bureau, either investigating or supervising the investigation of child abuse and sexual assault cases.
Excellent. So we are not dealing with somebody wet behind the ears, folks. If you ask him a question, I'm sure that you were, and you would be for us now, the go-to man to get the proper answer, the correct answer, not answers that, as you and I have discussed on several occasions, the answers that are being given out are not necessarily the right answers.
Exactly, or they're politically correct.
That's right.
And I don't play that game.
Right. We don't want to be politically correct. If that's what politically correct means, I will take me out of that. Yeah, for sure. So you were chosen to be part of the Blue Ribbon Commission by the Board of Supervisors, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Supervisor Michael Antonovich appointed me as one of the 10 commissioners to the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Excellent. And that was after the horrific death of Gabriel Fernandez.
Correct. That's what spurred that commission to be formed. As I'm sure you've read and heard, there were many commissions before that. Yes. With many, hundreds of recommendations. Yes. One of the things that I'm most proud of with our commission is that we broke new ground. Unfortunately, it shouldn't have been new ground, but it was, in that law enforcement has always been a forgotten element in child abuse. All of the focus, whenever you hear of reform in child abuse, child protection, children or child fatalities, you hear about the failures of children's services, whether it's DCFS in LA County or whatever city or county you're in. And always neglected is law enforcement's role. Well, law enforcement has at least a 50% responsibility in this investigation. They are not just idly sitting by.
Right.
And the detectives that work the specialized units, the Special Victims Bureau, SVU, LAPD's Abused Child Unit, the detectives do outstanding work day in and day out.
Wow.
But it's the buy-in from the departments, the patrol officers. And it's not that they don't care or don't want to do it. In my view, it's the lack of importance by those running the organizations. They look for gangs, they look for problems, they look what the normal average person wants taken care of. And those are very important elements.
Of course they are.
But
those gang members, let me just remind you, and you know what I'm going to say. Those gang members were the children 10, 15 years ago that were abused, that were forgotten about, and they're pissed off, and they've grown up, and now they have a vengeance, and they don't care.
Exactly. Much of the crime, including homicide,
yes,
much of it started when they were abused children.
That's right.
But law enforcement has not, in my view, paid enough attention to it. The child abuse detectives, the child abuse units, are the stepchildren of the detective bureaus throughout this country. And
the
they
child
need
abuse
to get
units are the stepchildren of
the detective units.
Okay.
They are not as important in the views of the administrators, the chiefs, the sheriffs, as the homicide units or the gang units.
Why is that?
It's not as glamorous, for one. And
right.
two, I talked to your producer earlier, this is a dark subject.
Yes, it is.
People don't want to talk about child abuse over dinner table. You put a homicide detective in the room, everybody wants to know about the latest murder.
That's right.
Which is ridiculous.
That's right. You're so right.
They don't want to hear about the child abuse case. It's too taboo.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to bury their head and pretend that it doesn't happen.
That's right. It's too close to home. It's too personal.
Exactly.
It's in their communities. And the mere fact that they're not doing something about it, or they don't know how to do something about it, makes it such an ugly topic that it's better to talk about the killer, maybe the gang member, that they can support the PD in taking down.
Right.
Yeah. This is a bad, bad mentality that has been spreading for so long now that it's a comfort level.
Right. Well, you watch even movies, television shows that have anything to do with child abuse, and who is the focus? The social worker.
Yes.
The cops will stand back and wait to see what the social worker does.
Good.
Social workers aren't investigative police officers.
Thank
they don't
you.
work criminal cases. Most of them do an outstanding job.
Right.
But to expect them to be social workers and police is a ridiculous assumption that is never going to work.
Of course not. Well, they're not. When you first joined the force so many years ago, even then, there was a stringent training protocol. There was psychological tests, right?
Yes.
You have to have a certain personality. You have to have a calmness. You have to be able to, even when it might personally affect you, maybe something happened within your family, you have to be able to separate those two so that you can do a proper investigation.
Correct. And you have to understand the criminal law aspect of it.
Absolutely.
Social workers don't get the training in the criminal law. They don't collect evidence.
They don't know how to. They're not trained.
They're not, and they shouldn't be.
And they shouldn't be.
And we shouldn't expect them to be the catch-all.
And they shouldn't be, because they're not trained. And they have enough to do with writing the petitions when they go to court, with helping when appropriate, and you and I will speak about this a little further, in finding a placement, if a placement is necessary, doing home studies for people who want to adopt from the state.
Right. They have a huge caseload and a huge responsibility.
Yes. They don't need to take yours.
No. They don't.
And they don't do a good job when they try to.
Well, exactly. And it's
not
anybody's
I'm not
fault.
finger pointing. Listen.
And they don't want to. They want the cops there. But when the cops don't take it seriously, and we've seen it in case after case, not just Gabriel Fernandez, but where law enforcement shrugs and says, well, that's a social worker's job. That means that officer in the street, and generally you're talking the patrol level, don't have a clear understanding of the system. And it's not getting the buy-in it needs. I believe you need a top-down buy-in. And not only to agree, Sheriff Baca agreed to a number of changes with the Sheriff's Department that I was
Sheriff
very...
Baca in Palmdale, in Lancaster.
In Los Angeles County.
He
made a lot of
Sheriff,
changes.
yeah.
And he has officers rolling out on every suspected child abuse. But if his chiefs, commanders, captains that are running the stations don't have the same buy-in, and the deputies, they have a million things to do out there. They have to be a jack of all trades.
Right.
So if child abuse isn't a priority in their boss's mind, it's not going to be in theirs.
Absolutely.
So we need to have a buy-in from the top down, from the sheriffs, from the chiefs, to make sure that those jobs are being done properly and that the protocols are being followed, cross-reporting is done correctly, so that you do have the two-prong attack.
Right.
Sacramento wrote the law, and most states, I believe all states have it, and that's cross-reporting. So when an allegation of physical or sexual abuse comes in,
okay,
whoever gets it, the social worker or the cop, have to tell each other about it.
So I know that the police would do a SCAR report.
Right, and the social worker would do the same and notify the police.
Really?
Unfortunately,
wow, no,
many
I didn't know
police
that.
agencies just shrug their shoulders and read it, say, well, if the social worker needs us, if they feel it's a crime, they'll call us. That's not the mentality we need.
Isn't child abuse a crime?
Exactly. And we have to start treating it like a crime.
Yes.
There are levels of child abuse that are not.
Right.
There
absolutely.
are social
Neglect.
aspects, exactly,
right,
that are better served by social workers, therapists,
right,
and monitoring and reunifying and putting the family back together.
But I don't think it would take a rocket scientist to be able to differentiate the two. And if somebody had some problem, then they probably should not be in this field, right? I mean,
Correct.
It's pretty, the kid is not being dressed properly. The kid looks malnutritioned. Stuff like that really should be handled by a social worker. It's something that you really can't pinpoint. It just becomes hearsay from a legal perspective.
Right.
And that might be something where they need a social worker to go and visit, to check out the house. Police and detectives don't have to do that. Marks on the body, forensic examinations that come back with vaginal lesions on 4 and 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds, STDs. I have had several cases. I had a case for a 4-year-old, an STD. This is an Orange County case. The detectives did nothing. As a matter of fact, they gave it completely over to social services. When I got this case, I was livid. I didn't believe the parent. And I said, I need to see the forensic. 4 years old, she had chlamydia. Mm-hmm. You're not getting chlamydia unless there is sex happening. And I'm gonna put these on. I didn't want to, folks, because I didn't get a great chance to do my hair, so I figured these will. But we do have calls coming in, and I'm excited because if anybody can educate us about the legal perspective, we can't assume things, folks. We have to have the actual answers. No more speculations. No more. We have a million different stories going on, and this has to stop because this, I think, is part of the problem. I'm putting them on now. Okay. Hi, do we have a caller on the line?
Hi, it's Jennifer Ani.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, Dan, just to give you a heads up, Jennifer Ani is the legal analyst for the show. She's a San Francisco attorney. She is an attorney that handles many hundreds of DCFS cases. She's often in dependency court across the state because parents, she's very good. I consider her an expert. She always says, don't call me an expert. I have met several dependency court attorneys, and they lack the fire that Jennifer has. Many times I'll see her or I'm a paralegal as well, so we do a lot of work together, and she'll be up at 4 o'clock saying, okay, I'm looking at case law right now. And I mean, we're both driven in the same way, which is great. You don't find a lot of people like that. And she handles family law as well. So just a little background. So, Jennifer, this is Dan Scott. Dan is retired detective, if you've been listening, and fabulous.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so I'm going to shut up
so
now.
my first comment that I want to say, thank you for that introduction,
Sure.
Tammy. My first comment, Dan, to you, what I usually say about my work when I'm at a party is that, I can't really talk about it because it clears a room,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's the essence of it. But I could not agree with Dan more than that social work is social work, and it should be reserved for cases that aren't criminal. And when you have a criminal interest or matter, we need the police to come in. And so often that doesn't happen. And that's so frustrating for me as an attorney because I get cases where they've been investigated by a social worker who have had no training whatsoever in the type of investigative work that goes into a criminal investigation for a sex abuse case, for example.
That's right.
And it's very disturbing to hear that when state law in California instructs law enforcement to investigate these cases. I won't go into all the details, but there's a case in Los Angeles County that the judge in a civil case found the officer, the department, and the city liable for not investigating a case because the law specifically says law enforcement will investigate physical and sexual abuse of children.
That's so interesting because it's disturbing on the same level. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, we need a Dan.
I can say 99 of 100% of my cases that involve sexual or physical abuse are not investigated by police officers. In fact, what happens, officers come to the scene and they call the social worker. And lots of times, the parent there.
Jennifer, you're breaking up a little bit.
Assume custody. And
Jennifer, I don't know if you're moving, but you.
I'm sorry, I'm in Costa Rica. I apologize.
Well, don't apologize. We apologize that we're not there. No, you're doing good. Are you moving around though?
I'm not.
Okay. All right. No, you sound good now. We didn't catch all of that though. Please repeat it.
What part did I stop at?
After the 99% of the time,
okay.
And then you said so many times.
99% of the time in my cases,
right,
the physical and sexual abuse cases are not investigated by police officers, or rather peace officers,
right,
as they should be. They're investigated by social workers who are called by the peace officer.
That's correct.
And so, I mean, if a peace officer could, I mean, that's how these cases get instigated, is that the police officer basically passes the ball. And are they instructed to do that?
No, that is unacceptable. Well, they might be on certain departments. I don't know. But it is not. It should not be acceptable, especially in states, and most do have the same basic structure as California.
And she's California,
right.
So even if we focused on a state that we do know that the structure is established to do just that.
That agency is frankly just kissing off that case, and they're taking the easy route and saying let the social worker handle it. They're not doing their job.
But they're obligated to.
They're obligated to, and if it was a civil case and they were sued, I guarantee you they would lose. And all you have to do is look up Alejo versus Alhambra.
Alejo versus Alhambra.
And you will see where the judge specifically points out that law enforcement shall investigate these cases. It is not up to social workers. Social workers need to be involved.
Absolutely.
And what I call it is a parallel investigation.
That's right.
It's not a collaborative.
Right.
Even though they should communicate, they need to both do. They each have separate goals. They should follow that path towards the final outcome, which is hopefully what's best for the child.
That's right.
Communicate along the way, but you have criminal and then you have the social worker. And the social worker's goal is family reunification.
Right.
That's not going to hold water with me if I believe this perpetrator who battered a child belongs in jail.
Exactly. And many times, or raped a child, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Do you know how many rapists and Jennifer, I know you can concur with this one, how many rapists that we have seen cases of. These kids have been raped. They're torn. They're young. Like I said, they have STDs. And the parent that the child identified as being the perpetrator wins full custody.
It's unacceptable, and it's just a failure.
That's a crime in
the
itself.
System.
Absolutely.
85% of child sexual abuse is committed by someone that the child knows and or trusts.
That's right.
If
Absolutely.
not a family member, then it's extended family,
right. Uncle,
a teacher, a coach,
That's right.
Some capacity like that.
That's right. Well, they say 5 to 7% is stranger danger. The rest is somebody they know, high percentage for older sibling abuse. That's very prevalent. But it is somebody that they know. The child is often groomed, and
we investigate those cases. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, I know LAPD.
I've never had
County,
them investigate one case, and I've had hundreds.
I have put a lot of people in state prison for those exact crimes. Av has my peers in the Special Victims Bureau and in LAPD.
God bless you.
I know. No, he's fabulous. He's a real voice. He is pissed off. He doesn't. He really cares about children. He doesn't like to see these types of shenanigans going on where people are not stepping up to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. Even though Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know. I'm sorry. I cut off. I think at the point where I was saying, what can I do as an attorney? I mean, as in my role, in my limited role, what can I do to make sure that the right person does the right job?
Find out from that agency why they didn't investigate when they have a legal obligation to. Show them the law that I mentioned, Alejo versus Alhambra, and ask them why they didn't do their job in investigating these cases. Not waiting for the social worker to call us weeks later.
Right.
Anybody in law enforcement will tell you the most critical time is the first 72 hours.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to wait for a social worker to call you a week or 2 or 3 later, it's too late. The evidence is gone.
The evidence is gone.
Right.
Children rejuvenate very quickly. If there's any physical evidence, that's gone after 72-hour window. And then it becomes the kid's word against the smooth talker, and it's just not going to fly. And the DA, consistent, I've been in the DA's office several times here in Los Angeles, where they say, listen, Tammy, it's not that we don't believe the kid. It's not that we don't believe the journal that was written in for years. It's that unless we have corroborating witnesses, it's the kid against this person. We don't want to put the kid in the stand. We can only take cases where we're really going to win. And it's just like, it's mind-blowing to me because the kid continuously gets the short end of the stick.
Exactly.
For failure for law enforcement to be in. And if we could call them, or if we can, I mean, are there any codes that you can recommend, Dan? Like,
well, can there be some type of change where there's a penalty for failure to comply?
Well, civilly there is.
Yeah. Yes.
I believe Alhambra was sued for $35 million, and that was in the 1990s.
Wow.
Can you imagine what it would be today?
There we go. Jennifer, let's talk more. We have more callers coming in. Jen, you can stay on the phone if you want, or you can hang up. I'd love for you to stay on, but we have to take another caller. John's giving me the evil eye. They're on right now. Hi, caller. Are you with us?
Yes. This is Lane.
Hi, Lane. How are you?
Okay. I had just a general question. When the police department says they have enough evidence to take it to the DA, did the police department substantiate it in order to say they had enough evidence to take it to the DA? And then what usually happens after it goes to the DA?
Well, it depends on the case, obviously. But when we believe a crime occurred and we have evidence, to substantiate that, we will take it to the district attorney. The district attorney will review it. Unfortunately, the district attorney's offices have a very high burden of proof.
Yes, they do.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes, they do.
So they need a lot of evidence. But there are many district attorneys, deputy district attorneys in LA County and throughout this country who are just as passionate as we are about prosecuting these types of crimes. The police can bring them a better product if they get involved sooner.
That's right. And
they don't have any interference where they're not getting the call for weeks. If they get in right from the beginning like they would on any other crime.
Exactly.
If a man gets beat up outside of a bar, the police come and start an investigation right away. If a child gets beat up in the home, we wait until social workers get there and tell us to come in?
Imagine that.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. There's nothing to be able to put any logic to that.
Right.
Nothing.
But the DAs do a very good job.
But they need enough.
They would do a better job if we would give them a better product.
So we need to, in other words, what it sounds like is we need to be on the police department from the beginning, encouraging and kindly and respectfully putting them in check and letting them know that we know that you are the better investigator and the only actual trained investigator for this. And we need for you guys to step up, as busy as you are, and to take the lead on this, because the social workers are not equipped, and we don't want to have more child deaths.
And the police officers on the streets know this. I mean, they're very passionate about it too.
Right.
But when they've got a million things to do and a million things to worry about, including recently being shot at for no reason,
Right.
it's very difficult for them to do their job. We need the administrators, the sheriffs, the chiefs, to make this a priority, to give the officers the resources and the training that they need.
Exactly.
Instead of getting 4 hours in the academy and then being on the street and getting no follow-up.
Wow.
Hello?
Hi, yes. Hi, caller. I'm sorry, caller. Hi, are you on?
Yes, I am, and I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a lag between what you guys are saying. I wanted just to address something I believe was said a couple of minutes ago, and this question is for Dan. First of all, you sound wonderful and amazing. And the question is, now, all of the many people that you have prosecuted and thrown into prison where they belong, those are the cases that have been substantiated. So my question is, what about the cases, the hundreds and thousands of cases that are not being investigated properly because they're being investigated by basically a civilian who is not properly trained? What about all of those cases and those children that are being placed into the homes of the very perpetrator that they have identified is sexually and or physically and or emotionally and psychologically abusing them? What about those cases? Because those people belong behind bars.
I don't think that Dan
Perhaps
is
indefinitely.
right. He's in 100% agreement, caller. The problem, which he has said several times now, is law enforcement cannot do anything if they are not called. So when you say, what about law enforcement? What about all those other children? Well, those other children, right, those other children are not gaining the attention of law enforcement for whatever reason. And so therefore it is falling on the backs of social workers who really shouldn't be taking on that big of a piece to look at and to be responsible for, nor are they trained to do so. And Dan's passion is he really wants to push for law enforcement to step up because they actually do have the proper training. They are passionate about this. They don't want to see children hurt. He's been in the force and recently retired, but for decades, and he has many colleagues throughout the years that have the exact same passion that he has had.
But there are agencies that are notified that are not doing the thorough investigations. In LA County, we have what's called eSCARS, Electronic Suspected Child Abuse Reporting System.
So it's E now.
Right.
It's electronic in LA County.
Right.
The rest of the state is the
Paper,
old way, manual,
docs,
paper,
right.
fax, whatever.
Right.
Regardless of how these agencies get it, they have a responsibility to investigate each of these. In LA County, we can look, and a blue ribbon recommendation was that the district attorney's office and the district attorney bought into this and was very supportive of it, Jackie Lacey, and to have a team monitoring the eSCARs. They can tell when a department, a police department, remember there's 46 police agencies in LA County.
Right.
When they open that SCAR.
When you say police agencies, you're referring to divisions?
Police departments.
Right, like
no.
Departments, okay.
Division.
Gotcha.
Divisions multiply it even more. Like the sheriff's department has 23 stations.
Okay.
LAPD has many divisions, but there's 46 separate departments. They all get these SCARs in real time immediately.
Wow. Okay.
What do they do with them? Some agencies investigate and read every SCAR. Some put them in a triage system. Some only roll out on a small percentage of them. The sheriff's department rolls out on 100%. And as we've seen with Gabriel Fernandez, mistakes are still made.
Absolutely.
But at least you have an officer out there.
Right.
And
Somebody went out.
the district attorney, beginning, I believe they're up and running now,
okay,
with a full-time deputy district attorney and 4 paralegals.
Looking at only
review
these cases.
stats. They'll be able to tell you, the public, how fast does your department, whether it's Glendale, Burbank, Santa Monica, Long Beach, LA Sheriff, how long does it take them to respond? What were their findings on these cases?
I'm still here,
Right.
so I have one more question.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, that's fantastic to see how fast it is and if they've even responded
All right.
at all.
Go ahead.
However, how about the length of time? Maybe when there was a response, how did they investigate? So just because there's a response,
he said,
just because we knocked on a door.
You hold the agency responsible. You call the captain. You call the sheriff or the chief of police himself, and you find out, why did it take so long? We don't tolerate it with other crimes. We don't tolerate it when people call and report a burglary that's 3
right.
days old. We want someone out there. Why do we tolerate
vandalism
it with child abuse where the child's still at risk in the home?
Stuck hostage.
We cannot tolerate it anymore. The
No, we
public
cannot.
needs to start holding law enforcement just as accountable
Yes.
as we do children's services.
That's absolutely right. Because if law enforcement
they're not-
if they were involved actually and really adamant, pushed that it wasn't a choice to throw an e-scar or a scar into a triage, and they knew that they needed to look at it because there was some real civil litigation lawsuits against them, they would handle it differently. And if they were involved consistently, I believe that the child abuse rate would decline instead of incline. And that's all that's been happening.
Exactly.
Well, maybe not necessarily a decline rate of child abuse, but definitely an incline and an increase of perpetrators being placed behind bars.
And lives being saved.
Lives being saved and child abuse being stopped.
Or at least decreased.
Well, amen to that. Thank you
right.
so much for having me on. Have a wonderful night. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, caller. Happy New Year. Okay. Lane, Jen, are you still on?
I'm here.
Yeah, I am.
Hi, ladies.
Hello.
So, okay. Tell us a little bit more about, ladies, any comment? Anything?
No, I just wanted to ask one more question.
Sure.
You know, when the police department substantiates that a child has been abused, and then they send them to the Children's Assessment Center, and I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are they looking for penetration? Because my granddaughter refused to be examined. She had a meltdown, but the forensic psychologist interviewed her, and definitely they said she was definitely abused. So we were concerned. You know, we were having a problem why the DA wasn't doing anything with the case, and he basically said because there was no physical evidence. Is that what they were looking for?
Well, that helps substantiate it, but you can get cases filed and prosecuted without it. But again, it's the entire package that you have to look at. Some departments use forensic interviewers. Sometimes the detectives do the interviews themselves. It depends on the jurisdiction. But most cases, or many cases, I would say the majority of sexual abuse cases, and I've investigated thousands, do not have physical evidence.
Right.
Where there wasn't necessarily penetration, but there was still contact which would make it a felony.
That's right.
And those cases can be prosecuted. But what it takes is dedication, takes timeliness, and it takes the passion and persistence of the detective to get a confession.
Right.
And when you get these cases early and you get them investigated correctly and promptly, it's amazing how many times a detective will get a confession or get enough corroboration from the suspect to get a conviction. We do get success on those, but again, it takes prompt and accurate reporting from the mandated reporters like nurses, doctors, teachers, without hesitation. It takes immediate investigation by law enforcement. You need a patrol deputy that's going to go out there and get the ball rolling, or a patrol officer.
Right.
Get it rolling, get the child in for an exam, get him in for an interview, whether it's by a detective who is specialized in it also, or a forensic interviewer.
Right.
Get this child in front of a deputy district attorney. We win a lot of those cases. Not every one, and not up to my satisfaction.
Nobody has a 100% win rate. I don't care how good you are.
When the system works, it works well. But you need everybody in this working together.
But the system has to be working.
Exactly. And people have to be doing their job.
My problem from my perspective, my frustration is, because I come into these cases after there's a problem and the problem hasn't been addressed. So how do I, and you may not have the answer to this, but if you could, from my perspective, when I come in for a parent whose child has been abused and they're in the system because a social worker decided somebody did it and that parent's responsible, my client's responsible, even though they weren't there, how do I get law enforcement back in the door?
Well, first of all, people need to start rattling their cage.
Right.
And letting them know that somebody dropped the ball.
That's right.
And all too often, after these cases are reviewed by people like attorneys in your position or death review boards or commissions,
that's right,
nobody's calling the top people and saying, wait a minute,
what happened?
Your department failed.
Yes.
We don't want the officers fired. We want them trained.
Right.
We want you to recognize, Mr. Sheriff or Mr. Police Chief, that your department dropped the ball. Why weren't they investigating this case from the get-go?
Right.
And we need to start calling, just like I said in the beginning, why were there hundreds of points of recommendation to the Board of Supervisors in the past, and the failures of law enforcement was never mentioned?
Hello? Another call. Hi, we have another caller on the line. Hi, Marilyn?
Oh, now that you finally get to me, now I forgot what I was going to say. Well, here.
Well,
okay,
Happy New Year.
See, you've already covered exactly what this has been written about, is that child abuse is a crime. It needs to be treated as such. This child abuse hotline is, all it does is open up a way for social services to do. I don't even want to go into what they do, but I will tell you this. While I was listening to you, I was in a legislative meeting last year in my state, and we were trying to get some law to hold social services accountable. And here is what the director of social services said to me. She said the police do not know how to investigate child abuse.
Well, send them to me. I'll teach them.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, this was another state.
I've been to many states teaching it. The National Prosecutors Association teaches it. NCMEC.
Well, you know what? Of course the police know how to investigate.
They know how to investigate crimes, and child abuse is a crime.
It's a crime.
How about
There's no reason that police haven't learned that in their basic training.
Well, no, they have learned it. They have learned it. But what Dan is saying is, all too often, they're passing the buck because social services has kind of picked up that role, and he's trying to.
So it's a culture of thought that's been going on for decades.
Exactly.
And it needs to change.
And it does need to change.
It needs to change, yes.
Needs to change. I'm getting echo here, so I'll get off. But, you hit the nail on the head. This show hits the nail on the head. Unless this is changed, nothing is going to happen.
Correct.
And he said so many other, and we know this, so many other blue ribbon commissions have happened. Why do they happen? They happen because something so serious has prompted them to take action to calm the public by telling them, we're starting a blue ribbon commission because we need to look at this. And what Dan is saying is, not on one occasion have they ever so much as recommended that law enforcement step up really strongly
and do their job.
Go ahead, Jen.
That's where it's at. That's where it went astray years ago, decades ago.
Go ahead.
And it needs to be fixed right there.
Exactly. And like I said, the cops on the street, they want to do a good job. They will. They've got a million things to do.
They will.
Yes.
But if their bosses don't show them and let them know that child abuse is a priority, and we're going to respond to it in a timely manner, just like any other assault call. We're not going to triage it. We're not going to let social workers dictate when we roll out.
Right. Social workers.
It'll make a difference. Let social workers do their job. They do a great job, most of them.
Most of them.
But let them focus on what they're good at.
That's right. And what they know how to do.
Well, but parents don't know this.
No.
Parents need to call the police first.
And they can.
And the abuse hotline second.
The abuse hotline in L.A. County will notify the police in real time right away. It still needs
What if they
tweaking.
don't, though? This is my
It's automatic. It's automatic. So law enforcement is getting every physical and sexual abuse allegation in L.A. County in real time. Now, when is that department?
What if they weren't? When you say it's automatic.
It's set up in the system that they are. The question is, when is law enforcement reading it? The sheriff's department, it goes directly to their computers. It pops up as a call for service.
Okay.
Other departments prefer to get it by email or by fax, and they look at it when they get around to it.
So how is it determined which ones go to the sheriff's versus which ones
by
go to...
address where the crime occurred.
So if the sheriff's department has jurisdiction over that particular area, then it goes to them and they do read it in real time, whereas another one...
The other agencies might wait and read it when they get a chance or every, morning. It's got to be real time.
Yeah,
everyone should be getting these calls and reviewing them as they come in.
That's right.
But your caller made a great point. If the mandated reporter or the citizen believes that physical or sexual abuse is going on, nothing is stopping them from picking up the phone and calling law enforcement direct.
First.
Exactly.
Because law enforcement, you can bet your bottom dollar, will write that SCAR report. Now, them I've seen always write a SCAR report.
And a crime report if they believe a crime occurred, which then goes to a detective, and you get an investigation, and it's done promptly. Not waiting for the system to come to them.
This is very, very interesting, folks. Something else Dan and I were discussing was, I said, law enforcement doesn't always get involved, though. And he said they absolutely are supposed to.
Yes, we are supposed to investigate all physical and sexual abuse, their crimes. And we also, one of the things we talked about earlier today was protective custody.
Yes, that's right. Oh, this is big. You're never going to believe this one, folks.
The misconception by the public and, unfortunately, some law enforcement officers who I've heard personally.
You heard me today because, listen, I learned he's teaching me so much.
We don't have the authority as law enforcement officers to take children into protective custody. Only social workers do.
Right.
That's baloney.
Imagine that. I was telling him, well, listen, if social workers just did their jobs and you guys did your jobs, life would be so much better for these kids and so much safer, and they'd have some recourse for protection. I said, if social workers, I understand. I said, they have to take them into custody. They look for a placement and he said, I've taken hundreds of children into custody and found protection for them.
Exactly.
And I was amazed at that, folks. So it's not just the department.
Every cop on the street in California has the authority to take children into protective custody.
Of course
now,
they do.
We don't place them. We release them to the social workers. They find proper placement.
Right.
That's the way the system works.
Right.
But unfortunately, some officers don't know this, some high-ranking officers that I've had conversations with.
Right.
And many officers on the street are told, no, let the social workers do that.
Right.
No, if we recognize a child is endangered,
you're obligated.
And they're at risk, we're obligated to protect them.
It's not even a choice. It's not, let the social worker. You have a duty as a law enforcement officer.
Right. We need to start taking the lead in these investigations, not pushing social workers aside. We want them there to do their job.
Right.
But their job, not ours.
Exactly. and legislature has established that you are supposed to be doing
which
this.
Why we have cross-reporting. I don't agree with everything that they come up with in Sacramento, believe me.
You and me both.
But this one,
and I'm sure we'd all agree, folks.
This one,
is a good one.
I agree.
Is
they
a good
nailed
one.
it.
But the one that they nailed, nobody even freaking knows about. How's that? I mean, talk about a backward system. We don't even know that we can call the law enforcement and say, hey, we know that social services is involved. Wonderful. But guess what? We need for you to stay involved, and you are responsible to stay involved.
Exactly. And every state, because I know this, is more than just California.
Right. Naturally.
But I have reviewed for other studies that I've done.
Okay.
Other states. And most of them have similar. Some states I saw where it's optional to cross-report. That's not acceptable.
Right.
It should be mandatory that all physical and sexual abuse be cross-reported so that both the Children's Services and law enforcement are notified in real time. There is a move to get e-scars through every county in California. I'd like to see it go nationwide, where every police agency and social worker department are communicating in real time. Through e-scars, you can put notes as far as the case. You can put information, your numbers there, so the social workers don't have to search for you.
Right.
You can put warning systems that are built in, so that when you have a hazardous hit, you have a child that's under the age of 3. That many of the triggers that we look for that are more susceptible for child homicide are triggered. You could get an email or a call that goes out by the system. Technology is there. Let's use it, folks.
Yeah. Hello. Jen, that just reminds me of that case where that child, you know what I'm talking about, that young child with the marks. Yeah, with the marks on, I'm not even going to say the gender of the child, but with with the marks on the legs. I mean, physical markings. There's no law enforcement that's involved.
No. And so, I'm sitting here on vacation in Costa Rica, and I'm thinking, Dan, I would love to tag team this issue with you.
Well,
Anytime.
Dan's going to do a lot of work. Dan and I have been connected for a while, and we've gone back and forth, and we've been trying to get him in, but he's been sick, or I've been sick, or so many things have
people
happened.
Are busy. The world's a busy place.
Yeah.
But I mean, between the three of us, we should be able to make some progress, because from my perspective, social workers don't understand that law enforcement can remove, as Dan was talking about. And I'm so happy to hear Dan say that, because that is the officer's job, to remove a child in danger. And so often they wait for the social worker, who then creates a barrage of, bad decisions.
Lack of understanding a proper investigation. We can just say it like that, because they're not trained to investigate.
And bad decisions.
And knowing each other's role. I've had social workers tell me, I'm putting this child back in the home. And I said, really? Let me get your name and let me get it spelled right.
I love it. Yeah.
Because I believe this child's in danger.
And I'm a little more trained than you
are. And
you're
telling me the child's safe.
Right.
And I go, wait a minute.
Right.
And it's my call.
Right. That's right.
So it's not, they can put them back, but generally, if you have the officer articulating why this child's in danger, the social workers aren't going to put him back in that environment. But if we, as law enforcement, take a passive role, and I've seen it time and time again, where you put a cop in a room with a problem and they're going to fix it.
That's right.
You put a social worker in the same room with them and they're going to back off and they're going to let the social worker. That's a mindset that has to stop.
Okay, so we've got a couple more things that we need to cover, and we are running out of time. Okay, Blue Ribbon Commission. We had some great people step up, do a lot of work. They spent a lot of money to get this work done, and they did not incorporate any recommendations.
The only recommendations that are already afoot are the Sheriff's Department agreed, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department agreed to make it mandatory to follow the law, that all reports get cross-report and documented.
Okay.
That was implemented while the commission was still active by then Sheriff Baca.
Okay.
I don't know if they're doing it. You can pass a rule, but if people aren't pushing it, so
a rule is only as good as it is enforceable.
I would like a report from the Sheriff's Department, but I'm not on the commission anymore, so I can't request it.
Well, I have a national organization, so I can request it.
Let's hear what their results are, how it's working. Are these things being done? The second recommendation was the committee I told you about, or the team from the district attorney's office.
Right.
That is up and running. So in 6 months, let's ask District Attorney Jackie Lacey, who is outstanding and very supportive of this. How's it working?
How is it going?
How are these departments doing? Are they investigating these cases in a timely manner?
Right.
What is their rate of finding substantiated cases? The average in LA County by all of the agencies is about 25-30%. But there's some with 5 or 6%. And they have the same demographics as a department with 30%. Why? Those are the questions. As far as the recommendation, the rest of the recommendations, I don't know. We have 2 new supervisors.
Right.
They need to get up to speed.
Right.
But we still have 3 that were there.
That's right.
What's going on? When are there going to be results? When is the Office of Child Protection going to be up and running? I can name people right now that could be putting that and would do an outstanding job. They're right here in LA County.
Are they retired?
No, but they're willing to take the job.
Maybe we're going to pull them into our little web, Jennifer. The web that really is going forth, the passionate web of people that really just don't have any more tolerance. You know, Dan brought up a good point, and I really do think it's this simple. When social workers go in to a crime scene, for example, homicide, how would they be received?
They wouldn't. They don't belong there.
They don't belong there.
You need the homicide detectives there.
Why?
Because they're trained to do their job, and it's a crime.
It's a crime.
But child abuse, before it turns into a homicide, is still a crime.
That's what I'm saying. Child abuse is also a crime.
It's one punch away from a homicide.
Thank you.
Why do we let that one sit when we don't let the homicide sit?
Exactly. We don't let the DV sit.
Exactly.
Well, you know, we've got all of these programs now for DV because they step in. It doesn't even matter if the husband or wife don't want to press charges. It's mandatory now.
Well, because law enforcement was forced into that because they weren't doing their job.
So we need to take that step.
I don't want to see it mandatory. I want to see it voluntary. I want law enforcement to step up and do it. I don't want them ordered that they have to take people to jail. That's not the right way to do it.
No, it's not about jail. It's about stepping up and protecting.
Right. But the laws are there. We don't need new laws.
Right.
We need law enforcement to step up and take the lead. Do what they're good at. Do what they're great at.
Yes.
The law enforcement. California is one of the leading states in law enforcement, and there's other ones. I've been to many states.
And one of the highest rates of child abuse.
Yes. We need to get more involved.
Yes, that's the problem.
Throughout this country.
Yeah. Folks, I want to strangle my own neck right now because we need another hour. We need to have Dan come back. We definitely need you to come back. I will pick you up.
Anytime.
We're just touching. We're just scratching the surface. Let's remember that Dan has 30 plus years. Primarily, all of those years were served in some respect within the child abuse arena, at least 26 or greater. He knows his stuff. He was chosen with the most recent Blue Ribbon Commission. He has trained, and he's passionate, and it really pisses him off when he sees children that remain in dangerous situations when they clearly don't have to, whether it's kind of an easy resolve if the steps were being taken, because they're not. Children are being tortured, murdered. They're stuck in horrific situations, and they're too little to defend themselves. Dan, any last words? I'm so honored to have you. I'm so excited.
People need to get involved. People cannot just sit back and accept the status quo. Law enforcement needs to be called. Their commanders, their chiefs, the captains don't take no for an answer.
Is there a penal code? Penal code 11165 says...
It is in there, yes.
Okay.
It is in the mandated 11165 and on.
Okay.
But it's a duty for law enforcement to investigate. And every state that I've reviewed has the same basic requirements.
Of course.
So let's get law enforcement to do what they're great at, investigating crimes. I know they're busy. I don't want to put more on my fellow officers.
Absolutely.
But this is a priority. It's more important than anything they do.
You don't want your fellow officers, this is the way that I'm going to present it. I don't want to see any law enforcement or civilians being shot at because a child was left abused, and now we have chaos in our freaking society, and we all can agree with that. Things are getting out of hand because children have been left abused, and they are pissed off, and they don't have any foundation, and we have to stop it. So we're going to have you on again soon, and you know we have a lot of work to do. The Blue Ribbon Commission, folks, call law enforcement first before you call social services.
When it's physical abuse or sexual abuse.
Right. Not for nothing, because then you blow it for the real cases, because they'll look at every case as if it's bogus. Don't abuse the system. Use it wisely and when it's needed. UBN Radio, we love you as usual for supporting us and supporting children. And Jennifer, Lane, Marilyn, all of our listeners, I see the chat room is filled, and I'm sorry I didn't even get a chance to respond. I've been looking, and I'm sorry. I love you guys. See you next week, 7 p.m. Happy New Year. Be positive, trust people, and we love you.
Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
I need a boy to take it over. Looking for a guy to put in work.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life.